So get this, we're having a dance party right now, apparently at my house. My kids are. I knew this was coming. I just forgot about it. And so I forgot to record our conversation here earlier in the day when things would be quiet. So now I've been relegated to the back bedroom. I made a blanket fort back here to gobble up the sound so it wouldn't quite be so echoey. And I'm using a different mic. I don't know if it even sounds good. I guess we're fixing to find out. But the kids, they've been doing these dance parties lately. And it's not what you think. I know where your heads went. You were like, oh, I keep track of the trends. And the kids right now are really into the forbidden sensual dance of love, the lambada. But it's not that. They don't lambada at all. Instead, they're into two-step and swing and folk dance and line dancing, and in between their little dance parties. And these are juniors and seniors in high school. Some middle schoolers are in there as well. I mean, they're not little kids. But in between all that, they go to the thrift shop and they buy cheap outfits that work for the different style of dance. And the boys are all into it too. Everybody's having a really fun time with it. All the parents, we started heating up our garages in the winter so they could go out there and dance their hearts out and have fun. It's just a blast. No one told them to do it. They all spontaneously decided dancing seems like a fun thing that used to happen, and phones are stupid, so let's not stare at those dumb rectangles. Let's do things. And so it's this whole society of people, young people who do things, and the thing they like to do is dance. And their favorite type of dance is square dancing. I think the idea of coming together and learning the whole thing and having to have every single person have all the moves and steps down is the fun of it, because it allows them to coach up the younger kids. And I am telling you, when the whole thing comes together, it's remarkable. Everybody knows where to be. It all moves in unison. Did you know that you can get certified for different levels of square dancing, by the way? I did not know this. But the kids have been getting certified for more and more complex dances so that they can go and jump in with existing squares. I guess that's what they call it. But none of the kids are doing square dancing except for this circle of kids. So they're going to these dances that are put on by senior citizens who've been square dancing for decades. And kids never come to this, but now they're just getting ambushed by 20 youngsters who are wearing appropriate attire. And of course, the seniors are delighted to have them show up. It's been a huge win. It's been a great thing. I'm going to ride this for as long as I can. But I love what the square dancing communicates. They're practicing doing things with a unified purpose and a unified focus. They are making something through that unity and by learning the dance steps with each other that cannot exist if just one of them does it on their own or if they all do their own thing. It is a thing that definitionally requires unity of purpose and focus and teamwork and agreement to make it happen at all. And here it is. Likewise, in Ezra and Nehemiah, we've seen a resurgence in the ability of the Jewish people to match dance steps with each other, to come together to achieve things that cannot be achieved alone. Remember, one of the big challenges of these two books, the big questions is, can a sense of cultural and religious and ethnic unity be achieved to do things that simply cannot happen and will not happen without achieving that? Well, it's a big challenge because that hasn't been the strong suit of the Jewish people throughout the Old Testament, and yet it has to be their strong suit now or it will fail. It keeps wobbling throughout Ezra and Nehemiah. It looks like we're going to get back to the old ways and it's just going to break. But every time things seem to look super dark, a leader rises up and says, we got to pull ourselves together. We have to do the dance steps together or we can't fix this thing. And the people keep responding. I think my kids are watching a Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly movie. Right now, I can barely hear it in the background. I think they are spontaneously watching movies that feature dancing from the 1950s and trying to imitate the steps. It's loud, but I appreciate what they're doing, and the metaphor continues to be wonderful in the background as we are talking about people pulling together in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. In Ezra 5, the work is stalled out on rebuilding the temple, and the prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, show up. And they're like, hey, this isn't right. You guys need to pull it together. And instead of the people rejecting the prophets, as they so often do throughout the Old Testament, instead they're like, no, we'll listen to you. What do you got to say? This is how that goes. Ezra 5:1. Now Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the prophet, a descendant of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel who was over them. Are they going to get mad or are they going to listen? They listen. Verse 2. Then Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, Shealtiel and Jeshua, son of Jozadak, set to work to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem, and the prophets of God were there with them, helping them. This is awesome. This is not how the story typically goes in the Old Testament, but a few decades later, Ezra shows up on the scene in person, and now he discovers some problems, some cultural rot, and he makes a public display of grief over the mistakes the people are making, and rather than them being angry that the prophet is calling them out, or that their leader, their teacher of the law, is calling them out, instead they go to him in his grief and they say the following, Ezra 10:4, "Rise up, Ezra. This matter is in your hands. We will support you, so take courage and do it." They're going to follow his lead instead of being stiff-necked and stubborn. They're trying to pull together. They're trying to get the Squaredance certification so they can make something beautiful together that they cannot otherwise make on their own. A page later in Ezra 10, Ezra has challenged them deeply. And it says this, "The whole assembly responded with a loud voice, 'You are right, Ezra. We must do as you say.'" You're seeing the pattern in these books. Unlike the rest of the Old Testament, every time they need to be challenged by a leader, they admit the leader's right and they do the thing. Then in Nehemiah chapter 2, Nehemiah shows up and he looks at the walls under cover of darkness. He hasn't told anybody what the deal is yet. And then he realizes, you've been lazy. You should have put these walls back together. And he calls out the people. He challenges them. It goes like this, Nehemiah 2:17. "Then I said to them, 'You see the trouble we're in? Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and we'll no longer be in disgrace.' I also told them about the gracious hand of my God upon me and what the king had said to me." Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to get mad? I mean, this is an insult. Why are you saying that we haven't done what we said? Instead, this is how it goes. They replied, "Let's start rebuilding." So they began the good work. That's it. Let's do it. Let's start rebuilding. And then in chapter 4, we get more trouble as Sanballat and the bad guys threaten to kill everybody, but Nehemiah comes along again. He provides leadership. He says in verse 14, "Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes." And they do. So this is a pretty good track record that this group of people can respond to criticism, they can respond to a challenge, they can rise to the moment, they can get back on track with their dance steps and do something, make something beautiful that they could not make on their own, that they have to work together to make. Can we rise to the challenge one more time, though, in Nehemiah chapter 5? This might be the darkest challenge of all. Economic exploitation is happening. Some of these people are having to sell their kids to make ends meet. This is a horrible situation, and Nehemiah is furious to discover that this economic problem is being inflicted upon the Jews by other Jews who are violating the age-old rules of the Old Testament by collecting interest. Nehemiah 5, verse 6, "Will the people, particularly the rich people who need to be corrected here, take yet another round of correction, or are they going to get mad?" When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and officials. I told them, "You are taking usury from your own countrymen." So I called together a large meeting to deal with them, and I said, "As far as possible, we've bought back our Jewish brothers who were sold to Gentiles. But now you're selling your brothers only for them to be sold back to us?" They kept quiet because they couldn't find anything to say. So I continued, "What you're doing here is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain, but let the exacting of usury," that's interest, "stop. Give back to them immediately their fields, vineyards, olives, groves, and houses, and also the usury, the interest that you're charging them, the 100th part of all the money, grain, new wine, and oil." What are they going to say? That's a big challenge. That's not your normal, "Hey, get to work." Okay, we'll get to work. That's kind of our job. We get it. This is getting into people's pocketbooks, deep into it. Nehemiah is effectively calling a spontaneous, unscheduled year of Jubilee as a way to draw on a cultural norm out of season to fix something that is a violation of a cultural norm. All of this is weird and out of process, but at least Nehemiah is drawing on something that's familiar. He's pleading with them to just accept his leadership, read the situation. You're making the God of Israel look stupid in front of Gentiles with this behavior. You're being unjust to your brothers and sisters. Why are we rebuilding ourselves as a people if this is going to be the kind of people that we're going to be when we're rebuilt? Why would God bless such a thing? Come on, think, people. Massive paraphrase is mine. It's a serious chastising And I suppose this has been the big build-up question of the whole day. Are we going to square dance here? Are they going to realize their dance steps were wrong and stick with the recent trend of responding to stern correction from the leaders God has put in front of them? Or is money going to be the bridge that is a bridge too far? And are these handful of wealthy elites going to tell Nehemiah to stick it and walk off the project along with all of the funding and leadership they bring to it? Here's what they say, Nehemiah 5:12. We will give it back, they said, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Okay, look. To you and me, that seems so morally obvious, and just clearly that's what they ought to do. But what if it was you? What if you read the market the right way? And sure, okay, maybe some people didn't like the way you did it, but you finally amassed a family fortune. Everything's working. You made lemonade out of lemons. You pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, and you've positioned you and your descendants for generations to come in a great way. And then somebody comes along and in 2 paragraphs is like, give it all back. You're done. It was wrong. Give it back. You're violating everything that is right. You've embarrassed yourselves in front of everyone. Submit to this leadership and this order that I am giving you. I think the hackles would go up on the back of most of our necks. I think it would take an amazing commitment to a bigger picture thing going on here to do it. And further, if the guy saying that it needed to be that way was getting rich off the whole deal, I'd be like, no. So what, you can profit off of this and get incredibly rich, but we can't? No, I'm not doing it. I'm not giving it back. You first. But they can't even say that because Nehemiah is living among the people. He's on the walls doing the work. He's risking his own neck. And he's not making some gigantic profit off of all of this. He specifies that more than once here in the book of Nehemiah. Now, they don't have a leg to stand on. What they did was wrong. Their only hope, I guess, in getting away with it was just never maybe get called out on it. But they did get called out on it. And instead of doing the thing that most of us would do, which is try to justify our behavior, they humbly and quietly, with very few words, say, we'll give it back, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Okay, look, all the other tests that we've encountered up till this point, I secretly kind of expected them to pass them. But straight up honest, I expected them to fail this test, and they passed it with flying colors. These people could do anything. They have unity. They know the dance steps. They're certified for the level 8 square dancing dance. I don't know. I just made that up. I don't know. That's how that actually works. But apparently, from the wealthy all the way down to the poor, they're all understanding that if they rally behind Nehemiah and they do these dance steps together, they can make something beautiful through unity and cooperation that cannot be accomplished apart from that. And now it feels like this thing is going to be a win. Straight up. That's how I'm reading it. And I guess we'll find out more about how it all plays out next time around. That's plenty. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.